One rocket on this boat weighed 99 short tons, like a loaded freight car. Such cars on board stood 20. And with all this load, the ship went to a depth of 1,640 feet. In order that rockets generally fit, the boat had to be built as tall as a 9-story building. She in this list not alone. Here will be a hunter, which makes oxygen from seawater and for 3 months does not see the sun. Will be 2 missile carriers collided in the middle of the ocean. At that, each of them was considered. Will be a hull, for destruction of which paid its main opponent. And we will finish with an apparatus which was laid down still under the Soviet Union and brought to the fleet for 30 years. Its cargo is called Weapon of Retaliation. It must reach the target even then when to give the order will be already nobody. What is this machine and why in autumn of 2022? Because of it was sent a warning to NATO headquarters. I will tell at the very end. Well, and for now, welcome to the channel for the richest.
Luxury life.
Dmitry Donskoy. On board of this boat was a swimming pool, small, with heated seawater. Nearby, a sauna and a solarium. The designers understood the crew of 160 people will spend underwater 120 days in a row, and people need a corner where one can forget for an hour that around, ocean and steel. Everything else in her also does not fit into the usual frames. 172 meters, about 564 feet, that is 1.5 football fields. Underwater displacement, 48,000 metric tons, that is about 52,910 short tons, a record which nobody has beaten since 1980. Inside not one strong hull, but 2. They lie parallel, like barrels of a double-barreled shotgun, and between them are hidden silos for those same 99 short-ton rockets. The project was led by Sergei Kovalev, general designer, who drew missile boats for half a century. The task was simple in words, to give an answer to the American Trident. The hull was laid down in Severodvinsk in 1976, launched in 1980. In NATO, the class was named Typhoon. At home, it passed as Akula. Underwater, the boat accelerated to 27 knots, about 31 miles per hour, dived to 1,640 feet. Outside, the hull is covered with rubber, a layer as thick as a palm. It dampens sound, and to the touch, the side is soft, an unexpected property for a war machine weighing a city. In the 2000s, Donskoy was retrained. Old rockets went into history, and the boat became a floating testbed for the new Bulava. The first launch was made from its side in 2005. It outlived all sisters in its class. In February 2023, it was withdrawn from the fleet. What the construction cost, nobody knows. In the Soviet Union, such a price was not counted in money, and a clear figure does not exist to this day. The American answer to this project was twice lighter. The dispute it won, not by size. Ohio. A full salvo of this boat cost more than $300 million, not counting the boat itself. 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, about $2 million per piece at prices of the 20s. Each flies for 1,500 kilometers, about 932 miles. So it was not always. Ohio entered service in 1981 as a completely different ship, a carrier of 24 ballistic missiles, the third largest in the world after the Russian Giants. 170 meters of length, about 558 feet, more than 18,000 metric tons, about 19,840 short tons underwater. Then treaties began to cut arsenals, and over the boat hung the threat of decommissioning. The fleet decided otherwise. From 2002, the hull was rebuilt, in 22 silos instead of 1. Ballistic missile replaced 7 cruise missiles each, like cartridges in a drum. There also remains space for 66 special operations fighters, and locks through which they go into the water while the boat moves at depth. The conversion of 4 such ships cost approximately $4 billion, $1 billion per hull. Cheaper than building new ones. And the fleet was satisfied with that. Ohio has 2 crews, blue and gold, 155 people in each, 15 officers and 140 sailors. They relieve each other right at forward bases so that the ship almost does not stand at the pier. The air inside is circulated and cleaned with amine filters. This smell eats into skin and things. Sailors, honestly, recognize it years later faster than the faces of colleagues. Autonomy is limited not by the reactor, but by refrigerators. Food is taken for 60 days. Underwater, the boat keeps more than 20 knots. Where exactly its swimmers went out through the locks, such reports are not published. And in the Barents Sea in August of 2000, another large boat was being prepared for exercises from those that were built against aircraft carriers. From those exercises, it did not return. Kursk. 12th of August of 2000 year, Barents Sea, exercises of the Northern Fleet. At 11 hours 28 minutes, a Norwegian seismic station picks up an underwater shock. After 2 minutes and a quarter, a second, many times more powerful. It will be recorded by instruments even in Alaska. This is Kursk, 154 meters, about 505 feet, almost 24,000 metric tons, about 26,455 short tons underwater, a hunter for aircraft carriers of the Anti-project. The first shock, an explosion of fuel of a training torpedo right in the tube. The second, detonation of warheads in the bow. The boat lay on the bottom at a depth of 108 meters, about 354 feet. 108 meters is the height of a 30-story building. The conning tower was at 100 meters, about 328 feet from the surface. On board were 118 people. 23 sailors from the aft compartments moved to the 9th and waited for help. Among them, Captain Lieutenant Dmitry Kolesnikov. When the lights went out, he wrote by touch, in complete darkness, a list of those alive and a few lines to his family. The note was found only after 2 months. It ended with the words, "Do not despair." In 2001, the boat was decided to be raised. Such with a ship of similar weight had not been done by anyone. The contract for $65 million was taken by the Dutch, companies Mammoet and Smit. In the hull were cut 26 holes, cables were passed, and in 15 hours, Kursk was torn off the bottom. The destroyed bow was cut off underwater and left on the bottom. Later, it was destroyed. The official conclusion indicated a torpedo defect. The points in disputes it did not put to this day. This project still had one more hull. It was laid down in 1992 and by 2000 was never completed. The slipway was simply mothballed. Remember it. We will return to it. The commander of this boat does not look through a periscope. There is no periscope here. For the first time in over 100 years of the British submarine fleet, instead of a tube with an eyepiece, retractable mass with optics, the picture goes to screens in the central post. To the eyepiece no longer lines up. The image is seen by all who are supposed to. Anson was built in barrow and furnace, in a covered hull the size of several football fields. The program of boats of this type went heavily. Years of delays, cost overruns in billions of pounds. The fifth hull of the series was handed over to the fleet in 2022, and it cost more than £1 billion. The entire series of 7 such boats by that time had exceeded 11 billion. Further numbers sound like science fiction, but all this is serial equipment. 97 meters of length, about 318 feet, and 8,000 metric tons, about 8,818 short tons. Crew, 98 people. Speed, over 30 knots, that is about 34 miles per hour. Combat load, 38 Spearfish torpedoes and Tomahawk cruise missiles. The Rolls-Royce reactor is designed for 25 years without refueling. A sailor can serve on this boat his entire career and never see it being refueled. Oxygen and fresh water the ship makes from seawater. The limit of autonomy is set not by equipment, but by food. 90 days. 3 months the crew does not see a single ray of daylight. At the shipyard, they like to repeat that their boat is quieter than the background noise of the ocean. How many Tomahawks lie in the actual load, the fleet does not say. It is believed that hearing such ships is impossible. In February 2009, this was confirmed in the most absurd of all possible ways. Night in the Atlantic. The French fleet reported briefly. A boat on patrol touched an underwater object, probably a container. After 2 weeks, the report had to be rewritten. The container turned out to be a British nuclear missile carrier. Night of the 4th of February 2009, middle of the Atlantic. French Triomphant, 138 meters, about 453 feet, 14,000 metric tons, about 15,432 short tons, 16 ballistic missiles. British Vanguard, 150 meters, about 492 feet, 16,000 metric tons, about 17,637 short tons, 16 Tridents. The screech of metal on the hull at depth. Both crews were called to battle stations, and neither understands what happened. The reason is that for which both boats were created. They were built to be inaudible, and the sonar of each other indeed did not pick up. The routes of such patrols are classified, even from allies. London did not know where Paris sailed. Paris did not know where London sailed. Two ships blindly went to one point of the ocean. The collision was acknowledged by the French Minister of Defense, Hervé Morin, after the story leaked to the British press. Both boats reached bases under their own power. At Vanguard, dents on the hull. At Triomphant, the sonar dome was smashed. Repairs stretched for months. The bill went to tens of millions. On the two sides that night were about 250 people and 32 missiles with dozens of nuclear warheads. One Trident at purchase cost about $30 million. The missile cargo of that night pulled the annual budget of a small town. Where exactly the meeting occurred has not been made to this day. The lesson was credited by both headquarters. Quietest does not mean farthest from trouble. And in Russia at that time, they were completing a boat that had been assembled for years from foreign hulls. Yuri Dolgoruki. 17 years from laying down to raising the flag. During this time, the country changed 3 presidents. The boat was laid down in 1996, and almost immediately there was nothing to build with. To keep the hull from dying on the slipway, ready-made sections of 2 unfinished hunter boats were welded into it, Kuglar and Riss. The first missile carrier of the new generation was literally assembled from parts of other ships. Construction would freeze, then revive. It was launched only in 2008. Then problems began with the main thing, with the missile. Bulava was made specifically for this boat, and half of the first test launches ended in failures. The program was demanded to be closed. Then the missile flew, and the dispute ended by itself. The general designer was the same Sergei Kovalev, the man who once invented the Akula. Dolgoruki he also brought to the water, but did not see the flag over it. Kovalev died in 2011, 2 years before the transfer of the ship to the fleet. The missile carrier itself turned out to be twice lighter than the Typhoon, 170 meters, about 558 feet, and 24,000 metric tons, about 26,455 short tons, 16 silos, crew 107 people. Instead of propellers, a water jet. Behind the stern, not a wake, but almost smooth water. From a long-term construction, the project turned into a series. By 2025, there were already 8 such boats in service. What the lead hull cost was never officially stated, and open estimates vary by factors. In America in those years, there was its own long-term construction. Only there, the boat was delayed on purpose to cut it in half. That frozen slipway in Severodvinsk, which was mentioned after Kursk, all that time was not empty. The hull on it was slowly turning into a carrier of cargo that no other fleet on the planet has, that very weapon of retaliation. We are already close, but first, the most expensive attack submarine in the world. In September 2017, the boat entered Bangor base under a pirate flag. A black banner with a skull and crossbones above the conning tower of a nuclear ship. Nobody explained anything. This custom is British. It is over a century old. The Jolly Roger is raised after a successfully completed combat mission. The Americans adopted the tradition. What the mission was, not a word was said. That year, the flag over this conning tower was raised twice. Jimmy Carter is the third and last boat of the Seawolf class, and from her sisters, she differs noticeably. Even at the shipyard, the hull was cut and an additional section 30 meters, about 98 feet long, was welded in. A compartment for underwater vehicles, locks and cargo that the fleet does not publicize. Result: 138 meters, about 453 feet of length, and about 12,000 metric tons. The price came out over $3 billion. This is the most expensive attack submarine in history. For that money, the Royal Navy would have built 2 Ansons. She also killed the series. The fleet ordered 29 such ships. Congress left 3. The Cold War ended before the slipway could get up to speed. Underwater, the boat keeps up to 35 knots, and thrusters allow it to hover motionless at the very bottom, where communication cables run along the ocean floor. The ship was named after the only president submariner. Jimmy Carter in his youth served on submarines and studied under the legendary Admiral Rickover. The ship's sponsor was his wife Rosalind. Carter himself lived 100 years and died in December 2024. The boat of his name is still in service. What her missions are occupied with has never been told, and the pirate flag remains the only public hint. The fate of the giants from the beginning of our list turned out to be much more transparent. They were cut in front of witnesses, and the bill was paid by the former adversary. Legacy of the Typhoons. For the destruction of these boats paid the country against which they were built, not a metaphor, a line item of the United States budget. In the 90s, Russia had 6 Akulas and lacked money even for their maintenance. Then in Washington, Senators Sam Nunn and Richard Lugar passed a law. America finances the disarmament of the former adversary because an unowned arsenal is more terrible than an armed one. Under this program, thousands of warheads were deactivated and dozens of submarines were dismantled. The turn came to the giants as well. One of the 6, bearing the name Simbirsk, was cut from 2006 to 2008 on American money. First, the 99 short-ton missiles were unloaded by crane. Then, the rubber coating was stripped from the hull in layers. Then gas cutters took over, and above the slipway, fountains of sparks stood for days. By the mid-20s, 2 last Akulas remained afloat, Arkhangelsk and Severstal. For years they stood at the pier awaiting a decision, and the decision came the same, to metal. The reactor compartments of all cut northern boats are taken to Saidita Bay. There rows of identical painted blocks stand, a cemetery of the Cold War. How many decades these blocks are destined to stand there is not stated in any document. While the northern giants turned into rows of containers, in South Asia, the submarine fleet was just gaining speed, and it was hidden not at piers, but inside a mountain. Fleet of the Celestial. April 2019, Qingdao Roadstead, rain and fog. At the naval parade through the gray haze, a black hull passes with a characteristic hump behind the conning tower. The cameras get only a few seconds. This is Jin, a Chinese nuclear missile carrier, 135 meters, about 443 feet, about 11,000 metric tons, about 12,125 short tons, 12 missile silos. The missile is called Julang, in translation, giant wave, and it flies for 7,000 kilometers, about 4,350 miles. In Pentagon reports, the new hulls already have the next version, with a range almost twice as large. The West studies this fleet mostly from satellites. The main point in the images is the Yulin base on Hainan Island. Right in the rock gates are cut and the water goes into the darkness under the stone vault. The boats enter inside the mountain and from orbit they are no longer visible. The change over 20 years came out sharp. The first generation of Chinese missile carriers almost never left home waters. The Jins from the mid-10s go on long-range combat patrols, and there are 6 of them in service, according to American estimates. The Chinese fleet itself, by the 20s, became the largest in the world by number of ships. How many holes stand inside the mountain on any given day, outside nobody knows. The satellite sees the gates, but not the contents. However, the most secret submarine project of these years was built not here. Its hole we already met, on the frozen slipway in Severodvinsk. Belgorod. This boat does not obey fleet command in the usual sense. Its owner is the Directorate of Deep Sea Research of the Ministry of Defense, a structure without a press service, without parades, and almost without mentions. The hull was laid down in 1992 as an ordinary missile ante, a native brother of Kursk. Then the money ran out and the slipway froze for years. In 2012, the project was rewritten for completely different tasks. And in the summer of 2022, the ship was finally handed over to the fleet. 30 years from laying to service, such a long-term construction has not been known by any boat in history. But then it turned out to be something without analogs. 184 meters, about 604 feet, longer than any operating submarine on the planet, almost 2 football fields. Width, 15 meters, about 49 feet, displacement over 24,000 metric tons, about 26,455 short tons, 2 reactors, 120 days underwater, crew about 110 people. Its first job, to carry small deep-sea vehicles that dot from below the hull and go to work at the very bottom. Part of these tasks is related to objects on the ocean floor, with which not published. The second job is the answer to the promise from the beginning of the episode. 6 Poseidon vehicles, each as long as a subway car. Inside each, its own nuclear reactor. Stated speed, over 100 knots, that is 185 kilometers per hour, about 115 miles per hour. Stated range, over 10,000 kilometers, about 6,214 miles. Operating depth, up to 1 kilometer, about 3,280 feet. To intercept such, there is nothing yet, and that is the whole idea. The weapon of retaliation must reach, even if there is nobody left to answer. The world learned about it by accident. November 2015, a meeting with the president, a state channel camera takes a close-up of an open folder of one of the generals, and a scheme of a secret oceanic system goes on air. The Kremlin later admitted they showed what was not to be shown. Whose folder got into the frame has not been said to this day. And in autumn of 2022, Belgorod left the base in Severodvinsk, and a warning about possible tests was sent to NATO structures. A reaction to a single boat as to an entire fleet. Write in the comments everything you think about this, and subscribe to the channel for the richest. Hear about luxury, wealth, and life of the most influential people on the planet. Thank you for watching, and right now watch our previous episodes, which have already appeared on your screen.